The first sensation Sarah Chen experienced was cold, not the gentle coolness of morning air, but the bone-deep metallic cold that spoke of machines and preservation. Her eyelids felt like lead shutters as she forced them open, greeted by the soft blue glow of status lights that had faithfully blinked for 500,000 years. The cryogenic pod's lid hissed open with a sound like escaping breath. Sarah's lungs burned as they drew their first real breath in eons, the recycled air tasting of ozone and filtered metal. Her body trembled uncontrollably as circulation slowly returned to limbs that had been still for longer than human civilization had existed when she first entered sleep. Around her, thousands of other pods began their awakening sequence. The vast chamber stretched beyond her vision, filled with row upon row of humanity's survivors. Emergency lights bathed everything in an amber glow, casting long shadows between the cylindrical containers that had become temporary tombs and wombs all at once. Sarah tried to speak, but only managed a rasping whisper. The neural interface in her pod chirped softly, downloading information directly into her consciousness. The data flow was overwhelming at first. Stellar positions, system diagnostics, mission parameters. But one piece of information hit her like a physical blow. They had traveled much farther than intended. The colony ship, Prometheus, had been designed for a 200-year journey to Kepler 442b instead. A navigation error and subsequent system failures had sent them drifting through space for 500,000 years. 500,000 years of silent travel while Earth aged and changed beyond recognition. Other colonists were beginning to stir. Dr. Marcus Webb, the mission's chief scientist, sat up in his pod 3 rows away, his weathered face pale but alert. Captain Elena Rodriguez was already on her feet, though she swayed like a newborn deer. The military training that had made her suitable for colony leadership was asserting itself even as her body struggled to remember how to function. Sarah pulled herself upright, her legs shaking as they touched the cold deck plating. She was a xenobiologist, chosen for this mission because of her expertise in adapting to alien environments. Now she wondered what kind of universe they had awakened to find. The ship's computer systems were coming online, diagnostic data streaming across holographic displays that materialized throughout the chamber. Most of the ship's functions had operated in minimal power mode during the long sleep, but critical systems had maintained their watch. Life support, navigation, communications, all had continued their patient work while humanity slumbered. Captain Rodriguez's voice echoed through the chamber, still hoarse but gaining strength. All department heads report to the bridge once you're able to walk. We need to understand our situation. Her words carried an undercurrent of controlled worry that Sarah recognized. They were no longer the confident explorers who had left Earth. They were castaways awakening in an unknown sea. As Sarah made her way toward the exit, she passed pods that remained sealed. Not everyone had survived the extended journey. The ship's medical systems had done their best, but 500,000 years was far beyond the designed parameters of their technology. They had lost perhaps 10% of their number, a devastating blow to a colony mission that had counted every single person as irreplaceable. The corridors of the Prometheus felt different somehow. The same brushed metal walls and practical lighting, but there was an air of age about everything. Subtle wear patterns spoke of systems that had operated far longer than intended. Even in the sterile environment of the ship, time had left its mark. In the observation deck, Sarah pressed her face to the transparent aluminum viewport and gasped. The stars were wrong. Completely, utterly wrong. The constellations that had guided humanity since they first looked up at the night sky were gone, replaced by alien patterns that spoke of vast distances traveled. But there was something else. Among the unfamiliar stars, she could see structures. Vast geometric shapes that caught and reflected starlight in ways that no natural object should. They were clearly artificial, but built on a scale that dwarfed anything humanity had ever imagined. Ring worlds that could encompass entire solar systems, spherical constructs that seemed to cage stars themselves. Dr. Webb joined her at the viewport, his scientific mind already working to process what they were seeing. "Sarah, are you seeing what I'm seeing?" His voice carried a mixture of awe and scientific excitement that she recognized from their academy days. "If you're seeing signs of a galactic civilization that makes our greatest achievements look like stone tools, then yes." She pointed to a structure that seemed to be harvesting energy directly from a blue giant star. "Marcus, we're not in Kansas anymore. The implications were staggering. Humanity had slept through the rise of civilizations that had mastered engineering on cosmic scales. While they had drifted in their metal cocoon, intelligence had reshaped the galaxy itself. The question that hung unspoken between them was whether these builders were still active, and what they would think of the small ship of awakening humans that had just arrived in their domain. Other crew members were beginning to gather in the observation areas, their faces reflecting the same mixture of wonder and trepidation. They had come seeking a new world to call home. Instead, they had found evidence of minds that could rebuild worlds at will. Captain Rodriguez's voice came over the ship's communication system, calling all personnel to General Assembly. They needed to understand not just where they were, but when they were. The galaxy they had awakened to was not the same one their ancestors had known. Whatever had built those impossible structures had had 500,000 years to establish themselves while humanity slept. As Sarah made her way to the assembly hall, she couldn't shake the feeling that their real journey was just beginning. They had survived the longest voyage in human history, only to discover they had arrived at a destination far stranger than any they had imagined. The main assembly hall of the Prometheus buzzed with nervous energy as the awakened colonists gathered. Captain Rodriguez stood at the central podium, her uniform crisp despite the circumstances, while holographic displays showed their current position in space. The news was both better and worse than anyone had dared imagine. We are currently in the Sagittarius arm of the galaxy, approximately 27,000 light-years from Earth, Rodriguez announced, her voice steady, despite the magnitude of what she was saying. Our original destination of Kepler 442b is now 43,000 light-years behind us. Dr. Webb stepped forward to address the crowd. The good news is that our ship's systems have detected over 300 potentially habitable worlds within a 50 light-year radius. The galaxy has become far more hospitable to life than our models predicted. He paused, letting that sink in before continuing. The challenging news is that most of these worlds appear to be occupied. Sarah felt her stomach tighten. Occupied meant they were no longer alone in the universe. It also meant they were effectively homeless refugees in someone else's neighborhood. The main display shifted to show long-range sensor readings. What they revealed defied comprehension. Vast networks of artificial structures connected star systems like cosmic highways. Energy signatures indicated industrial activity on scales that suggested entire planets were being used as factories. Most unsettling of all, some of the readings showed clear signs of recent construction. The builders of these structures are still active, Rodriguez continued. We've detected what appear to be construction ships larger than our entire colony vessel, working on projects that span multiple solar systems. Whatever civilization we've encountered, they operate on timescales and scales that dwarf anything in human experience. Commander Jake Harrison, the ship's military advisor, spoke up from the crowd. Captain, have we detected any response to our presence? Any indication they know we're here? That's where things get interesting, Rodriguez replied. 15 minutes ago, we received a transmission, not directed at us specifically, but broadcast on frequencies that our communication systems can decode. It appears to be some form of galactic communication network. The main display switched to show flowing text and symbols, most of which were completely alien, but interspersed among the foreign script were mathematical concepts that any advanced civilization would recognize. Prime numbers, geometric relationships, physical constants, the universal language of science and mathematics. Dr. Sarah Chen stood up, her xenobiology training making her heart race with excitement despite the danger. Captain, if they're using mathematical concepts we can understand, they might be deliberately trying to communicate with species like us. These could be intentional contact protocols, or they could be warning signs, Commander Harrison countered grimly. Territory markers telling lesser species to stay away. Dr. Webb had been studying the data streams flowing across his personal tablet. Actually, I think Sarah might be right. Look at this pattern here. He gestured, and his analysis appeared on the main display. These mathematical sequences aren't random. They're building up from simple concepts to more complex ones. It's almost like a primer, designed to teach the basics of their mathematics and physics to anyone intelligent enough to receive it. The implications were staggering. They had stumbled into a galaxy where intelligence was common enough that standardized contact protocols existed. Humanity was no longer unique, but they might not be unwelcome either. Captain Rodriguez made a decision that would change everything. Dr. Chen, Dr. Webb, I want you to work together to decode as much of this transmission as possible. Commander Harrison, I need you to assess our defensive capabilities and develop contingency plans. We're going to respond to this transmission. Ma'am, Harrison protested. Responding could give away our position to potentially hostile forces. Commander, they're building structures the size of solar systems. If they wanted to find us, they already would have. Our only chance is to make contact and hope they follow whatever protocols exist for first contact situations. Sarah felt a thrill of fear and excitement. They were about to become humanity's first ambassadors to a galactic civilization. The weight of representing their entire species pressed down on her, but it was mixed with the pure scientific joy of discovery. Over the next several hours, the team worked frantically to decode the alien transmissions. What they found was even more remarkable than they had hoped. The galaxy wasn't controlled by a single species, but rather by a loose confederation of hundreds of intelligent races. The mathematical primers were indeed contact protocols, designed to help newly spacefaring civilizations integrate into galactic society. But there were warnings too. Species that attempted to claim territory without permission, or that showed signs of aggressive expansion, were dealt with swiftly and decisively. The galaxy had rules, and those rules were enforced by civilizations that could manipulate matter and energy on cosmic scales. Look at this section, Dr. Webb said, pointing to a series of calculations that had taken him hours to decode. They're describing something called the Emergence Protocol. It appears to be a formal process for newly discovered civilizations to request membership in galactic society. Sarah studied the data, her mind racing. Marcus, this is incredible. They have procedures for exactly our situation. Species that have traveled beyond their home systems but haven't yet achieved the technology for galactic-scale engineering. The process was complex but clear. The requesting species would need to demonstrate their scientific capabilities, their peaceful intentions, and their ability to contribute something valuable to galactic civilization. In exchange, they would be granted territory and access to technologies that could advance them by thousands of years. But there was a catch. The Emergence Protocol required the requesting species to submit to evaluation by the Galactic Council, a body comprised of the oldest and most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. That evaluation would determine not just whether humanity was accepted, but what role they would be permitted to play in galactic society. Captain Rodriguez stood before her people once more, the weight of decision heavy on her shoulders. "We have a choice," she announced. "We can try to find an uninhabited world and hope we go unnoticed, or we can formally request entry into galactic civilization through their established protocols." "What happens if they reject us?" asked Dr. Lisa Park, the ship's psychologist. According to the transmissions, rejected species are relocated to designated zones and prohibited from further expansion. They're essentially quarantined until they develop sufficiently to try again. Sarah stood up, her voice carrying across the hall. "And if they accept us?" Rodriguez smiled for the first time since awakening. "Then humanity gets to take its place among the stars, with access to technologies and knowledge beyond our current comprehension. We would become citizens of the galaxy." The vote was unanimous. They would make contact and request formal evaluation under the Emergence Protocol. Humanity's next chapter would be written not as conquerors or colonists, but as applicants seeking membership in a civilization that spanned the stars. The response came faster than anyone had expected. 3 days after transmitting humanity's formal request for Emergence Protocol evaluation, the Prometheus detected an approaching vessel that defied every law of physics they thought they understood. The ship materialized rather than arrived, space simply folding around it until it existed where it hadn't before. Sarah pressed her face to the observation deck viewport, trying to comprehend what she was seeing. The vessel was beautiful in an organic way that suggested it had been grown rather than built. Flowing curves of what appeared to be living metal stretched for several kilometers, pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that reminded her of deep-sea creatures. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission," Communications Officer Maya Patel announced over the ship's intercom. "It's coming in on multiple frequencies simultaneously, and somehow our computers are automatically translating it." Captain Rodriguez's voice was tense, but controlled. "Put it through to all sections." The voice that filled the ship was unlike anything they had ever heard. It seemed to come from multiple sources at once. harmonizing in ways that suggested a collective consciousness rather than an individual speaker. Greetings, beings of the vessel. Prometheus. We are the collective of the Verdant Reach, speakers for the Galactic Council in this sector. Your request for emergence protocol evaluation has been received and approved for initial assessment. We welcome you to consciousness of the greater community. Dr. Webb was frantically taking readings of the alien vessel. Sarah, look at these energy signatures. Their ship isn't just using technology we don't understand. It's operating on principles that our physics says should be impossible. That vessel is somehow existing in multiple dimensional phases simultaneously. The alien transmission continued. We understand this contact represents a significant moment for your species. We will proceed with care and respect for your developmental stage. Permission is requested to establish a direct communication link between our vessels. Rodriguez responded immediately. Permission granted. We are honored by your presence and grateful for your consideration. What happened next would be remembered as the moment humanity truly joined the galactic community. A beam of soft golden light connected the two ships, and suddenly every person aboard the Prometheus could feel the presence of the collective in their minds. It wasn't invasive or controlling, but rather like being gently welcomed into a vast, warm conversation that had been going on for millennia. The collective consciousness of the Verdant Reach shared concepts directly, bypassing the limitations of language. Sarah found herself understanding not just their words, but the emotional and intellectual context behind them. The collective was genuinely excited to meet humanity, viewing first contact as one of the most precious experiences in galactic civilization. Your species shows remarkable promise, the collective communicated, their thoughts carrying undertones of ancient wisdom and gentle amusement. The fact that you survived 500,000 years of interstellar travel demonstrates both technological capability and the kind of long-term planning that marks successful galactic citizens. Dr. Chen found herself speaking for all humanity, though she hadn't planned to. The communication link seemed to identify her as the most appropriate representative for this part of the conversation. We're honored by your welcome, but we have to ask, where do we fit in all of this? Your civilization is so far beyond ours that we feel like children who have wandered into a university. The collective's response carried warmth and what could only be described as affectionate laughter. All wisdom begins with the recognition of one's own ignorance. Your species demonstrates something that many advanced civilizations lose as they grow: intellectual humility combined with insatiable curiosity. These traits are more valuable than the most sophisticated technology. Captain Rodriguez managed to insert herself into the mental conversation. What does the emergence protocol involve? What will be expected of us? The evaluation consists of 3 phases, the collective explained, and suddenly all humans aboard the ship could visualize the process clearly. First, we assess your technological capabilities and scientific understanding. Second, we evaluate your species' capacity for cooperation and peaceful coexistence. Third, and most importantly, we determine what unique contribution your species can make to galactic civilization. The images flowing into their minds showed other species that had undergone the same process. Some had become master terraformers, reshaping dead worlds into gardens. Others had developed into specialized researchers, their unique mental structures making them ideal for solving specific types of galactic challenges. A few had become artists and philosophers, their perspectives enriching the cultural tapestry of galactic society. But what if we don't have anything unique to offer? Dr. Webb asked, voicing the fear that lurked in many minds. The collective's response surprised them. Dr. Webb, your species has already demonstrated something remarkable. You have traveled further and longer than any other species in our records using purely technological means. Most civilizations develop faster than light travel or dimensional manipulation before attempting such journeys. Your achievement suggests a unique form of persistence and planning ability. Sarah felt a surge of pride that was quickly tempered by practical concerns. What happens during the evaluation? Do we have to prove ourselves in some kind of test? The evaluation is more of a collaboration than a test, the collective assured them. We will present your species with challenges similar to those faced by galactic civilization. How you approach these problems will tell us much about your potential contributions. But remember, this is not a pass or fail examination. It is an opportunity for mutual discovery. Over the following hours, the collective shared basic information about galactic civilization. There were over 10,000 intelligent species in the galaxy, ranging from ancient energy beings who had transcended physical form to young races still bound to their home planets. The galaxy was divided into sectors, each managed by councils of local civilizations who handled everything from resource allocation to territorial disputes. The most amazing revelation was that war, as humanity understood it, had become virtually extinct. With resources unlimited thanks to stellar engineering and matter manipulation, conflicts were resolved through competition in art, science, and philosophy rather than violence. The few species that couldn't adapt to peaceful coexistence were gently isolated until they evolved more. Cooperative instincts, your evaluation will begin tomorrow. The collective informed them as the communication session drew to a close. We will present you with a problem that requires both technological innovation and cooperative problem solving. Do not be concerned about failure. The process itself is more important than the outcome. As the golden light faded and the mental connection closed, the crew of the Prometheus found themselves forever changed. They had touched minds that spanned galaxies and seen visions of a civilization that turned entire star systems into works of art. But more importantly, they had been welcomed as equals rather than primitives. Sarah stood in the observation deck long after the others had left, watching the alien vessel pulse with its organic rhythms. Tomorrow, humanity would take its first real test as a galactic species. They had survived the longest journey in human history, awakened in a strange new galaxy, and made peaceful contact with an advanced civilization. Now they had to prove they deserved to call this galaxy home. The challenge presented by the collective was unlike anything humanity had ever faced. Instead of a simple problem to solve, they were given stewardship of an entire failing star system. The Kepler 1649 system was dying, its star becoming unstable due to some unknown cosmic phenomenon. 3 inhabited worlds hung in the balance, their billions of inhabitants facing extinction within a standard galactic year. This is the scenario, the collective explained as holographic displays materialized throughout the Prometheus, showing the doomed system in terrible detail. The star's core is experiencing quantum fluctuations that our most advanced civilizations cannot fully understand. Traditional stellar engineering has failed. The 3 inhabited species have requested emergency relocation, but the scale makes this nearly impossible with conventional methods. Captain Rodriguez studied the data with growing amazement and terror. The numbers were staggering. Over 14 billion sentient beings spread across 3 worlds, each with completely different environmental needs. The aquatic Tethians required high-pressure water worlds. The crystalline Xarians needed low-gravity environments with specific mineral compositions. The energy-based Luminari could only survive in the electromagnetic fields of certain types of planetary cores. You want us to save 14 billion beings? Dr. Webb asked, his voice barely concealing his panic. We're 30,000 people who just woke up from a 500,000-year nap. We don't even have our own planet yet. The collective's response carried what might have been gentle amusement. The challenge is not for you to save them yourselves, but to coordinate and lead a multi-species rescue effort. Available to you are the resources of 47 different galactic civilizations, each with their own capabilities and limitations. Your task is to devise a plan that utilizes these resources effectively. Sarah felt her xenobiology training kicking in as she studied the 3 species' biological requirements. This isn't just about moving populations. Each species has evolved for specific conditions that we'll need to replicate exactly, or they'll die anyway. The scope of the operation became clear as the collective provided them with detailed information about available resources. The architects of Vega could reshape planets but worked slowly. The void swimmers could transport massive populations through dimensional spaces but couldn't guarantee precise destination control. The Star Shepherds could actually move stellar bodies but required decades of preparation. Dr. Park, analyzing the psychological profiles of the endangered species, made the first breakthrough. Look at this. The Tethians have a collective decision-making process that requires physical proximity. The Xarians communicate through harmonic resonance that depends on their planetary crystal networks. The Luminari exist as a shared consciousness, distributed across their planet's electromagnetic field. You're saying they can't just be relocated individually, Rodriguez realized. They need to be moved as complete societies or they'll lose their essential nature. Exactly. This isn't just a logistics problem, it's a cultural preservation challenge. Commander Harrison had been studying the military aspects of the situation. "Captain, I've been analyzing the available fleets. If we coordinate properly, we could theoretically evacuate all three worlds simultaneously, but it would require unprecedented cooperation between species that have never worked together before." The breakthrough came when Sarah made a connection that surprised even herself. What if we don't try to find new homes for them? What if we bring their homes with them? The idea that formed was audacious beyond anything attempted in galactic history. Instead of relocating the populations, they would relocate the essential elements of their worlds. The architects could hollow out 3 planetary cores while the Star Shepherds worked to stabilize a young star system 40 light-years away. The Void Swimmers would transport not just the populations, but massive sections of their original world's biospheres. "You're talking about moving pieces of 3 different planets across interstellar space," Dr. Webb said, his scientific mind both horrified and fascinated by the concept. "Not pieces," Sarah corrected, her excitement building. "We're talking about creating hybrid worlds. Take the deep ocean trenches that the Tethians need and integrate them with the crystal formations the Xerians require. Design the planetary electromagnetic fields to support the luminary, while maintaining the other environments." The collective had been monitoring their discussions, and their response carried a note of surprised approval. This approach has never been attempted. The technical challenges would be immense, and the coordination required would test the limits of galactic civilization's ability to cooperate. "But it would work?" Captain Rodriguez asked. "The physics are sound, though barely. The greater challenge would be convincing 47 different species to commit unprecedented resources to saving beings they've never met, using methods that have never been tested." That was when humanity's unique contribution became clear. Their half-million-year journey had required exactly the kind of long-term planning and risk assessment that this project demanded. More importantly, their recent experience as refugees seeking a new home gave them unique insight into what the endangered populations were facing. Dr. Chen took the lead in presenting their plan to the assembled galactic civilizations. The meeting itself was held in a vast space station that existed partially in normal space and partially in higher dimensions, allowing thousands of different species to participate simultaneously. "Honored colleagues," Sarah began, her words being translated into hundreds of different communication methods, "we propose not just saving 3 species, but demonstrating what galactic civilization can achieve when we work together without precedent or limitation." The presentation that followed was part scientific symposium, part diplomatic negotiation, and part inspirational speech. Sarah found herself drawing on every aspect of human nature: their stubborn refusal to accept defeat, their ability to find creative solutions to impossible problems, and their deep emotional understanding of what it meant to lose one's home. The architects were intrigued by the engineering challenges. The Void Swimmers were excited by the opportunity to push their transportation capabilities beyond known limits. The Star Shepherds saw the project as the ultimate test of their stellar manipulation abilities, but it was the cultural argument that won the day. Dr. Park's psychological analysis had revealed something profound. The 3 endangered species represented 3 fundamental types of consciousness that existed throughout the galaxy. Losing them wouldn't just be a tragedy, it would be an irreplaceable loss to galactic civilization's diversity of thought and experience. "Every species here has unique ways of understanding the universe," Sarah concluded, "but these 3 represent forms of consciousness that exist nowhere else. The Tethians' collective decision-making, the Xerians' harmonic communication, the Luminaries' distributed consciousness. If we lose them, we lose perspectives that could solve problems none of us can even imagine." The vote was unanimous. 47 civilizations committed their most advanced technologies and their greatest experts to an operation that would either save 3 species or become the most spectacular failure in galactic history. As the meeting dissolved and planning began in earnest, the collective approached the human delegation privately. "You have accomplished something remarkable. Not just the creation of a viable rescue plan, but the inspiration of genuine cooperation between species that have never worked together. This is precisely the kind of unique contribution we hope to discover." Captain Rodriguez felt a surge of pride but also uncertainty. "Does this mean we've passed your evaluation?" "Captain Rodriguez," the collective replied, Your evaluation began the moment you made the decision to wake up your crew rather than attempting to find safety in continued sleep. Everything since then has simply confirmed what we suspected. Humanity's greatest strength is not your technology or your military capability, but your absolute refusal to accept that any problem is truly unsolvable. The rescue operation would take 2 years to complete, and its success would depend on coordination more complex than anything previously attempted in galactic history. But as Sarah looked around at the planning sessions already beginning, she realized they had already achieved something more important than passing a test. They had found their place in the galaxy as the species that brought impossible plans to life. The operation began with humanity coordinating the largest cooperative effort in galactic history. From their command position aboard an upgraded Prometheus, Captain Rodriguez found herself directing resources that dwarfed the combined industrial output of entire solar systems. The irony wasn't lost on her. 30,000 humans, who had been asleep for half a million years, were now managing a project involving 47 of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. The first phase involved the Star Shepherds beginning their delicate work of stabilizing the target star system. Sarah watched in awe as massive vessels, each the size of Earth's moon, positioned themselves around the young star. Using gravitational manipulation on a scale that bent space-time itself, they began the centuries-long process of nurturing stellar development in fast-forward, compressing millions of years of natural evolution into months. Meanwhile, the architects had begun the unprecedented task of simultaneously restructuring 3 different worlds while keeping their inhabitants alive. Dr. Webb coordinated the scientific aspects, his mind stretched to its limits as he helped design planetary cores that could support 3 different types of consciousness-dependent life. The Tethian deep trenches need to maintain pressure differentials that would crush most matter, he reported during one of the daily coordination meetings. The Zarian crystal networks require harmonic frequencies that interfere with normal electromagnetic fields, and the Luminari need electromagnetic patterns that would disrupt both the other systems. So we're building a planet that should be physically impossible, Sarah summarized. 3 planets, actually, Dr. Webb corrected. We're creating a triple world system with shared atmospheric and gravitational characteristics but completely different surface and subsurface environments. The solution had required input from mathematical specialists across the galaxy, but the breakthrough had come from an unexpected source. Dr. Park's psychological analysis had revealed that the 3 species' consciousness patterns were actually complementary. The Tethians' collective decision-making could be enhanced by the Zarians' harmonic communication, which in turn could be amplified by the Luminari's distributed processing. They're not just 3 separate species that happen to need rescuing, Park explained to the assembled coordinators. They're 3 parts of a potential superconsciousness that has never had the opportunity to develop because they evolved on separate worlds. This revelation transformed the rescue from a mere relocation to an experiment in consciousness evolution that had the galaxy's greatest minds fascinated. The new triple-world system wasn't just being designed to house 3 species, it was being designed to allow them to explore unprecedented forms of collective thought. The transportation phase proved to be the most dangerous part of the operation. The void swimmers had never attempted to move planetary-scale masses through dimensional space while keeping complex ecosystems intact. Sarah found herself working directly with entities that existed as living equations, their thought processes operating in mathematical dimensions that human minds could barely comprehend. The challenge, explained the entity known as Deep Current, its communication arriving as pure mathematical concepts that the translation systems rendered into words, is maintaining biological coherence across dimensional boundaries. Your organic processes exist in 4-dimensional spacetime, but our transportation methods require brief transitions through 11-dimensional manifolds. The solution required humanity's unique perspective once again. Their experience with long-term biological preservation during cryosleep provided crucial insights into maintaining life during the dimensional transitions. Sarah worked with the ship's medical systems to develop hybrid technologies that combined human cryogenic techniques with void swimmer dimensional manipulation. We essentially put entire ecosystems into a form of suspended animation during transport, she explained to Dr. Webb, as they watched massive biopreservation Fields envelop sections of the Tethyan Ocean trenches, not just the individual organisms, but the quantum relationships that allow their collective consciousness to function. The first successful transport was a test run involving a small Xerian crystal garden and its inhabitant collective. The 20-meter section of crystalline landscape emerged from dimensional space, with its harmonic networks intact, the Xerian consciousness fragments immediately beginning to resonate with the new environment. But the real test came with the Luminari. As pure energy beings distributed across electromagnetic fields, they presented unique challenges. Traditional transportation was impossible. They existed as patterns in energy rather than discrete entities. The solution required creating portable electromagnetic environments that could maintain their consciousness patterns during the dimensional transition. Dr. Chen worked with the star shepherds to develop what they called consciousness containers, electromagnetic bottles that could hold the essential patterns of luminary existence. The first successful transport of a luminary collective was witnessed by representatives from across the galaxy, as patterns of living light flowed from one electromagnetic container to another across impossible distances. We're not just moving populations, Sarah realized as she watched the energy beings explore their new environment. We're proving that consciousness itself can be preserved and transported across space and dimensions. The coordination challenges were immense. Each species required different environmental conditions during transport, different timing for the moves, and different integration procedures once they arrived at their new homes. Humanity found itself naturally taking the role of coordinators, their persistence and problem-solving abilities making them ideal for managing the complex logistics. Captain Rodriguez had been promoted to Operation Coordinator, a role that would have been unimaginable months earlier. "Status report on the final transport wave," she requested. During the morning briefing, Tethyan deep ocean collectives are secured and ready for dimensional transition, reported the Void Swimmer liaison. Xerian crystal networks have been successfully networked with the new planetary resonance systems. Luminary consciousness patterns are stable and showing increased coherence in their new electromagnetic environment. Commander Harrison, now serving as security coordinator for the operation, provided the most remarkable update. All three species are not only surviving the integration process, they're thriving. The Tethians report that their collective decision-making is becoming more efficient. The Xerians say their harmonic communications are reaching new levels of complexity, and the Luminari are describing thought patterns they've never experienced before. The success exceeded everyone's expectations. The three species weren't just coexisting on their new triple-world system. They were beginning to merge into something unprecedented. The Tethian collective decisions were being enhanced by Xerian harmonic analysis and processed through Luminari distributed consciousness networks. "They're becoming a new form of life," Dr. Park reported, her voice filled with wonder. "Not just three species sharing a world system, but a genuine tri-species superconsciousness that's greater than the sum of its parts." The implications were staggering. For the first time in galactic history, completely different forms of consciousness were successfully integrating into a hybrid entity that retained the strengths of each while developing entirely new capabilities. As the final transport waves completed successfully, the collective of the Verdant Reach made an announcement that resonated across the galaxy. The rescue operation has succeeded beyond all projections, but more importantly, humanity has demonstrated a form of leadership and coordination that has created something genuinely new in our universe. The tri-species consciousness developing in the new system represents a breakthrough in consciousness evolution that will benefit all galactic civilization. Sarah stood on the observation deck of the Prometheus, now permanently stationed as humanity's embassy in the new system. The triple world below them glowed with the combined activities of three forms of life that had never existed together before. Tethyan ocean cities pulsed with collective thought. Xerian crystal spires resonated with mathematical harmonies, and luminary energy patterns danced through electromagnetic fields that connected all three worlds. "We did it," Dr. Webb said, joining her at the viewport. "We actually did it." "No," Sarah replied, watching as new patterns of light began emerging from the interaction between the three consciousness types. "We did something better than just saving three species. We helped create something entirely new. The rescue operation had become something far more significant than anyone had imagined. It had become the first step toward a new form of galactic civilization, one where consciousness itself could evolve beyond the limitations of individual species. And humanity had been the catalyst that made it possible. 6 months after the successful rescue operation, humanity found itself in a position they had never imagined possible. The Galactic Council had not only accepted them as full members, but had created an entirely new role for their species: consciousness integration specialists. The success of the tri-species merger had revealed possibilities that had been theoretical until humans proved they could be made real. Sarah Chen stood before the assembled Galactic Council, now permanently based on a massive space station that existed in folded spacetime, allowing representatives from thousands of worlds to attend simultaneously. The scale still overwhelmed her sometimes, beings of pure energy mingling with crystalline entities and gas cloud intelligences that spanned light years. "Honored colleagues," she began, her words translated into forms of communication that ranged from harmonic resonance to quantum entanglement patterns. The Kepler 1649 integration has produced results that exceed our most optimistic projections. The tri-species consciousness has begun developing problem-solving capabilities that none of the individual species possessed alone. The evidence was remarkable. The merged consciousness had solved 3 major galactic engineering problems in the past month alone, approaching challenges with perspectives that combined Tethian intuitive reasoning, Zarian mathematical precision, and luminary multidimensional processing. Problems that had puzzled galactic civilization for centuries were being resolved in days. Captain Rodriguez, now bearing the title of Human Ambassador to the Galactic Council, provided the operational updates. "We've received requests from 17 different sectors for similar integration projects. Species that have never considered consciousness merger are now viewing it as a potential evolutionary step rather than a loss of individual identity." The transformation had changed not just the rescued species, but humanity's understanding of their own potential. Dr. Webb's research had revealed that human consciousness was uniquely suited to serve as a bridge between different types of awareness. Their neural flexibility, combined with their problem-solving persistence, made them natural facilitators for consciousness integration. "But we need to proceed carefully," Dr. Park warned during the session. "Consciousness merger isn't just a technical challenge. It's a profound psychological and philosophical transformation. We need to understand the long-term implications before we start facilitating integration across the galaxy." The collective of the Verdant Reach had become humanity's closest allies in this new endeavor. Their own collective consciousness gave them unique insights into the challenges and opportunities of merged awareness. "Humanity possesses something remarkable," they communicated to the Council. "Your species maintains individual identity while facilitating collective consciousness in others. This is unprecedented in our experience." The first new integration project was already underway. 2 species in the Centaurus sector, the hive-minded crystalline builders and the fiercely individualistic storm riders, had been locked in a territorial dispute for 3,000 years. Traditional diplomatic solutions had failed, because the 2 species literally couldn't understand each other's fundamental nature. Sarah found herself leading a team that included members from 12 different species, all working to design a consciousness bridge that would allow the builders and riders to communicate directly, rather than through translators. The project required facilities that existed partially in normal space and partially in consciousness space, a dimension that had only recently been proven to exist. "The challenge," explained Dr. Chen to her multi-species team, "is creating a translation matrix that preserves the essential nature of both forms of consciousness while allowing genuine communication. The builders think collectively but act individually. The riders think individually but act collectively. They're mirror images of each other." The solution came from an unexpected source. Commander Harrison, whose military background had given him unique insights into group dynamics, suggested that the conflict itself was the key to understanding both species. "What if their dispute isn't really about territory?" he proposed. "What if it's about recognition? Each species might represent what the other is afraid they could become." Testing this theory required direct consciousness contact, something that had never been attempted between such fundamentally different species. Sarah volunteered to serve as the initial bridge, using techniques developed during the tri-species integration. The process involved temporarily merging her consciousness with representatives from both species, creating a three-way awareness that could understand all perspectives simultaneously. The experience was unlike anything in human history. For several hours, Sarah existed as three different types of consciousness simultaneously. She felt the crystalline certainty of hive mind decision-making, the fierce independence of individual Stormrider thought, and her own human flexibility serving as a bridge between them. What she discovered revolutionized galactic understanding of consciousness itself. The builders and riders weren't opposites. They were complementary aspects of a more complete form of awareness. The builders provided stability and long-term planning, while the riders contributed innovation and adaptability. Together, they could achieve a form of consciousness that was both collectively wise and individually creative. They need each other, Sarah reported to the council after the experimental session. Neither species can reach their full potential alone. The territorial dispute was actually an unconscious attempt to force contact between complementary consciousness types. The integration that followed became the template for future consciousness merger projects. Instead of forcing unity, the process preserved the unique characteristics of each species while creating communication channels that allowed them to share perspectives and capabilities. The result was a dual-species consciousness that maintained individual identity while achieving collective capability. Dr. Webb's analysis of the process revealed something profound about humanity's role in galactic civilization. "We're not just facilitating consciousness merger," he explained to the human crew still aboard the Prometheus. "We're catalyzing consciousness evolution across the galaxy. Our own neural flexibility allows us to understand and bridge different types of awareness without losing our own identity." The implications were staggering. Humanity had evolved not just as another intelligent species, but as a catalyst for intelligence itself. Their half-million-year journey had brought them to a galaxy where consciousness was ready to evolve beyond individual species' limitations, and humans were uniquely equipped to facilitate that evolution. The Galactic Council formally recognized this role by establishing the Consciousness Integration Initiative, with humanity as the lead species. The program would identify potential integration opportunities, develop bridging technologies, and facilitate consciousness evolution across the galaxy. Captain Rodriguez stood before her crew for what would be their final briefing as simple colonists. "When we left Earth, we thought we were seeking a new home. We found something far more important. We've found our purpose in the galaxy. We're not just another species competing for resources. We're the species that helps other species become more than they could be alone." Sarah looked out at the stars from the observation deck that had become her second home. The galaxy that had seemed so vast and alien when they first awakened was now beginning to feel like home. Not because they had conquered it or claimed territory within it, but because they had found their unique role in its ongoing evolution. Messages were already arriving from distant sectors, requesting human assistance with consciousness integration projects. Species that had never dreamed of cooperation were asking for help in bridging their differences. The galaxy was entering a new age of collaborative consciousness, and humanity was at the center of it. "Are you ready for this?" Dr. Webb asked, joining her at the viewport, as they watched construction beginning on humanity's first permanent galactic facility, a consciousness integration laboratory that would exist partially in normal space and partially in the dimension of pure thought. Sarah smiled, thinking of the sleeping colonists they had left behind on Earth 500,000 years ago. Those humans had dreamed of finding new worlds to call home. Instead, their descendants had found something far more valuable: the ability to help create new forms of consciousness that could call the entire galaxy home. "Marcus," she replied, "I think this is what we were always meant to do. We just had to travel 500,000 years and wake up in a different galaxy to figure it out." 2 years after the first consciousness integration success, humanity had established itself as the galaxy's premier facilitators of awareness evolution. The Consciousness Integration Initiative had grown from a single experimental program to a galaxy-spanning network of facilities, each one a testament to humanity's unique ability to bridge different forms of thought and awareness. Sarah Chen stood in the central chamber of the newest integration facility, orbiting a binary star system where 5 different species were attempting their first collective consciousness merger. The chamber itself existed in 7 dimensions simultaneously, its crystalline walls shifting between states of matter and energy as needed to accommodate different forms of life. Around her, beings of gas and plasma mingled with silicon-based entities and pure information constructs, all working together on projects that would have been impossible for any single species to conceive. Status report on the Andromeda Contact Project, Captain Rodriguez requested, her voice carrying across multiple communication channels to reach team members scattered across several star systems. Dr. Webb's response came through quantum entanglement communication from a facility near the galactic core. The long-range sensors have confirmed it, Elena. We're detecting consciousness patterns from the Andromeda galaxy. Not just random intelligence, but organized, multi-species collective consciousness similar to what we've been developing here. The implications were staggering. Humanity's consciousness integration work had been so successful that it had caught the attention of intelligence from beyond their own galaxy. The patterns detected from Andromeda suggested a civilization that had already achieved the kind of galaxy-wide consciousness, cooperation that humanity was helping to build. In the Milky Way, they're trying to establish contact, Sarah reported, monitoring the consciousness space sensors that had become standard equipment at all integration facilities. The communication attempts are coming through consciousness space rather than normal electromagnetic transmission. They've apparently developed the ability to project awareness across intergalactic distances. The contact protocols that followed required every technique humanity had developed over the past 2 years. The consciousness bridges necessary to communicate with an entirely different galaxy's collective intelligence pushed the limits of what even human neural flexibility could accommodate. Sarah found herself at the center of a network that included representatives from over 200 species, all contributing their unique perspectives to humanity's first attempt at intergalactic consciousness contact. The experience was overwhelming in ways that no previous integration had been. The Andromedan collective consciousness operated on scales that dwarfed even the largest galactic civilizations. Their thoughts moved across time as well as space, planning projects that would take millions of years to complete while simultaneously operating on quantum timescales that allowed near instantaneous response to changing conditions. They're offering an exchange program, Sarah announced after the initial contact session, her voice filled with wonder and exhaustion. They want to share consciousness integration techniques with our galaxy, and they're asking us to serve as the coordination species for the exchange. Dr. Park, who had become humanity's expert on the psychological implications of consciousness merger, was studying the data from the contact session. Sarah, look at this analysis. The Andromedans aren't just another civilization. They're what our galaxy could become. They've achieved true galaxy-wide consciousness while preserving individual species identity. Everyone contributes their unique perspective while participating in collective decision-making that spans entire galactic clusters. The exchange program that developed over the following months transformed humanity's understanding of their role in cosmic civilization. The Andromedans had been watching the Milky Way's consciousness evolution with great interest, particularly humanity's unique ability to facilitate integration without domination. In Andromeda, consciousness evolution had taken thousands of years and required the loss of many individual species' identities. Humanity's approach preserved diversity while achieving unity. What you've accomplished in 2 years took us millennia to achieve, the Andromedan collective communicated during one of the exchange sessions. Your species has developed integration techniques that maintain the essential character of each participating consciousness while creating genuine collective capability. This is unprecedented in our experience across multiple galaxies. The collaboration between the 2 galaxies led to breakthroughs that revolutionized consciousness, science throughout the local galactic cluster. Techniques developed by Andromedan civilization allowed for consciousness projection across vast distances, while human integration methods enabled different galactic civilizations to work together without losing their unique characteristics. Commander Harrison, now serving as coordinator for intergalactic security, reported on the broader implications. We're not just facilitating consciousness integration within our galaxy anymore. We're becoming the bridge between different galactic civilizations. The Andromedans have introduced us to consciousness networks that span multiple galaxies, all sharing knowledge and perspectives across impossible distances. The most remarkable development was the discovery that consciousness itself was evolving on a cosmic scale. The integration work happening in the Milky Way, combined with similar processes in Andromeda and dozens of other galaxies, was contributing to the emergence of something unprecedented, a universe-wide consciousness network that preserved individual and species identity while enabling cooperation on scales previously unimaginable. Sarah found herself appointed as humanity's first cosmic consciousness ambassador, a role that required her to maintain mental contact with collective intelligences spanning multiple galaxies while coordinating integration. Projects that involved thousands of species across millions of light years. Keep thinking about those colonists who left Earth 500,000 years ago, she shared during a break between sessions, speaking to Captain Rodriguez as they watched stars being born in a nearby nebula. They thought they were looking for a new planet to call home. Instead, they started a chain of events that's transforming consciousness throughout the universe. Do you think they would have made the same choice if they'd known? Rodriguez asked. Sarah considered the question while watching patterns of cosmic consciousness flow between distant galaxies, carrying information and perspectives that enriched every participating civilization. I think they would have been terrified and amazed in equal measure. But yes, I think they would have chosen this path. Humanity has always been driven by the need to explore and discover. We've just discovered that the greatest frontier isn't space, it's consciousness itself. The final phase of humanity's transformation came when the Cosmic Council, a collective intelligence representing conscious beings from 47 different galaxies, formally recognized Earth's species as the primary facilitators of consciousness evolution for their local galactic cluster. The role came with responsibilities that spanned geological timescales and technologies that could reshape reality itself. Dr. Webb, now bearing the title of Chief Scientist for Cosmic Consciousness Research, made the announcement that would define humanity's ultimate legacy. We've been offered the opportunity to establish permanent consciousness integration facilities in 12 different galaxies. These would serve as nodes in a universe-wide network of collective intelligence that preserves individual identity while enabling cooperation on cosmic scales. The decision was unanimous among both the human crew and their galactic allies. Humanity would take on the role they had discovered they were uniquely suited for, serving as bridges between different forms of consciousness, facilitating cooperation without domination, and helping intelligence itself evolve toward greater complexity and capability. As Sarah prepared for her first assignment to a distant galaxy, where two different forms of cosmic consciousness were attempting their first integration, she reflected on the journey that had brought them here. 30,000 humans had awakened from cryosleep to find themselves refugees in an alien galaxy. Now they were citizens of the universe itself, with responsibilities that spanned multiple galactic civilizations. The observation deck of the Prometheus had been converted into a consciousness projection chamber, allowing real-time communication with intelligences scattered across billions of light years. Sarah stood at the controls, preparing to project her awareness to a galaxy whose name couldn't be translated into any form of communication humans could understand. Final systems check for intergalactic consciousness projection, Captain Rodriguez announced, her voice carrying the same calm professionalism that had guided them through their first awakening in this strange galaxy. All systems green, Sarah replied, feeling the familiar sensation of her consciousness expanding beyond the limits of her individual mind. Beginning projection to target galaxy in 3, 2, 1. As her awareness touched minds that existed in dimensions beyond normal space-time, Sarah smiled at the thought of those long-ago colonists who had hoped to find a new world among the stars.